What's up guys, Ben Milliken here, back for Mystery Tackle Box. You know, it's the dog days of summer right now. It's as hot as it possibly gets. And with that comes some of the hottest bites of the year and some of the toughest fishing of the year at other times. You know, when you have days like today where it's pretty much slick calm outside, there isn't a cloud in the sky, the sun's beating down on you, super hot days, those can actually be some of the toughest days to catch bass. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about a couple tactics I like to use first thing in the morning, and then later on as the day progresses, working on out deep. Whether you're a bank fisherman or a boat fisherman, you're not going to want to miss this one. Let's go. So the first place I like to start first thing in the morning on these super hot, balmy days is around just what we got behind me right here. That's around docks, boats. We got pontoons back here. That's an awesome form of cover that those fish oftentimes they move up in the night, they get up in there and they're feeding on bluegills and stuff in those low light situations. And before that sun gets high and hits them, I like to hit it with two different types of baits. Both are very similar baits, but they have different applications. The first one is a popper. This Booyah prank popper came in my mystery tackle box. It instantly became a staple bait for me. I had never used anything like this, a lipped popping bait, which I'll show you in just a second why that's effective. And then this other one, this poppin' frog, is another bait that works extremely well. So let me show you guys where and how I like to fish these two baits. So the first one we'll talk about is this goofy looking lipped Booyah prank popper. This is the one I like to throw the most, honestly, around any type of shade situation like this first thing in the morning. Anytime you have no cover or sparse cover, this guy gets the nod for me. It's got treble hooks on it. It's got a lot of rattles in it, so it's just a better fish catcher to me. It draws fish in a little bit better than a frog does. So the way I like to work this bait, I throw it in between these pontoons like this, or I throw it up where the shade is, wherever it's the lowest light scenario that first time in the morning, and I just pop it around really slow. Now, if the fish aren't eating the bait popped, a great thing about this bait is it works in ultra finessey, finicky type situations with this lip. That's the secondary motion that it has. And the way I like to fish it to take advantage of that, I'll simply just cast it out off the edge of one of these boats or off the edge of the docks. I'll pop it a few times and I'll give it really short, light twitches. That seems to be absolutely key. And then after I give it a couple light twitches, I'll reel it down for whatever fish that drew in that was looking at it just then. Let it come back up to the surface. Pop it a couple more times, and then I'll reel it down really slow again. I can't tell you how many fish this has caught for me in testing. Today, you know, it's not the best situation. I haven't caught a lot on Topwater today, but testing this bait out, throwing it the last month or so, it's really opened my eyes to a new, finessier type Topwater bait situation. Now, I'll pull out the frog whenever I come up to a situation like this where we found a corner, we got a little bit of grass in it. Whenever you got grass in it, it's obviously key to have a super weedless bait like a frog. You don't want to be throwing your treble hook bait in there, trying to catch fish on that, because you're just going to get it bogged up in the grass. Obviously, you're not going to catch anything if it's bogged up in the grass like that. But once again, I work it very slow and methodically. You know, it's first thing in the morning, so you can work baits a little bit more aggressively at times, but I like to leave it in the strike zone. If there's a little tiny patch of grass like this, pop it a couple times, pop it in as short of motions as possible to leave that bait in the same spot, and just kind of walk it back and forth, and usually that's what'll draw a strike. Now, as far as gear goes on both of these, I like braid for all my topwater fishing. I don't use any monofilament. Of course, fluorocarbon sinks. You don't want to throw fluorocarbon on topwater lures. It's just going to pull it under. It's going to wreck the action, everything. I definitely go a little bit heavier on my tackle with my frog. I go 7/6 heavy rod, 65-pound braid. But when I'm throwing the popper, I definitely like a little bit lighter rod. I use a 7-foot medium heavy rod it's got a really slow parabolic action, which makes it great for treble hook baits. And then I downsize the braid a lot. I go down to 30-pound braid, which is the lightest braid I use on casting reels. And that just allows for better casting distance, better action on the bait. That bait's really finessey, and so I like to have that nice subtle twitching motion with my rod to catch more fish. All right, so as the day progresses and the sun gets higher into the sky, a bait that's in my mystery tackle box that I really like to use is this Game Changer Eliminator. Let me talk to you guys about how I like to use this bait. You know, this bait, I can tell there's been a lot of misconception about it. It's a bait that it looks really funky. I mean, how many eel lures or anything like this is there on the market? But stay with me for a second and I'll tell you how I like to use this. First way I like to rig it is definitely on a Texas rig. So you can do a lot of different things with the Texas rig. You can do what I'm gonna do right now, and that is I have made it to a little point right here. I'm gonna make offshore casts, and basically I'm just gonna drag that thing really, really slow along the bottom. Now, when you're dragging that thing along the bottom, you can work it with a lot of little hops. You can stroke it up off the bottom real hard. I freak it with a 1/2 ounce weight usually so it stays down there. Or if I'm stroking it up, that thing's going straight down, straight up, and that tail's kicking like crazy. So I mean, even though it looks like a bait, you're just gonna cast down and maybe reel in because it's called an eliminator, an eel. You would think it's a bait that, you know, you want it to have that tail kicking action. My favorite way to possibly throw this bait is to cast it out on long pieces of cover and just kind of drag it, hop it back in. Now, the other way I like to fish this eliminator is on a Carolina rig, and I'm looking for pretty much the exact type of cover and structure offshore when I'm fishing on a Carolina rig. The only difference is, generally I'll bust out the Carolina rig whenever it's slick, calm, and sunny and those fish are in a really negative feeding mood. Days like that are absolutely key for a Carolina rig because your bait stays down on the bottom and it has a super, super natural presentation. Generally, I like cleaner water for that technique and definitely slick, calm conditions, because the cleaner the water is, the more space I like to have between my weight, the more leader, the more freedom of movement I want to have. And when those fish pick that eel lure up on the back of the Carolina rig, which this thing is one of the best all-time Carolina rig baits, they're not going to feel that weight. That leader and beads and everything's going to slide, your line's going to slide right on through, and that's going to allow for a lot more fish. When I'm fishing this bait offshore, and whether I'm throwing it on a Carolina rig or a Texas rig and I'm out here dragging it, I always like to use a long, more parabolic rod. I want that rod to really load up and slingshot that thing a long ways out there, because I want to make a long cast. I want this bait to be in the strike zone on the bottom as long as possible, and I'm always throwing it on like a 7-to-1 plus gear ratio reel. You want to be able to pick up a lot of slack when that fish bites, especially on a Carolina rig, and always fluorocarbon. I mean, I'm throwing 15-pound, 17-pound fluorocarbon. Generally, you don't need to go much heavier than that. 15 or 17 is spot on for when you're fishing deep, because your line's not going to have as much drag to the water column. But seriously, guys, get out, throw this bait around like offshore rock piles, even around brush piles and stuff like that, out offshore if you have a good Texas rig on it, and you're going to catch a lot of fish. This thing is a fish catcher. Now, like I was telling you guys, I really like this eliminator lure because it's super, super versatile, and that kind of brings me to my next point. This is the next type of cover I'm looking for when the sun's super, super high in the sky. You get into the hot part of the day, the afternoon. I love to get in and look around these thicker clumps of grass, lily pads, whatever I can find that's like this, and take that exact same Texas rig. I like it on a 1/2 ounce weight because it can penetrate some of this stuff, get down in there, and you can really see that tail flap as it goes through. And these are all going to be reaction bites. I mean, most of your bites are going to come as that bait punches down through that canopy. You can even bump it up, you know, to a 3/4, 1 ounce weight. Thought I had one right there, but that was some grass actually. But yeah, I catch a ton of fish flipping grass like this whenever that water gets super hot, the sun's super hot, bearing down. But one pro tip for you guys, if you want a little tip action going on, when you're looking for areas like this, a lot of times there's so many different areas in the lake that have these thick grass, these thick lily pads and stuff. The areas that are best to me are the ones where you pull up and you see all these different, you got dragonflies going on. If you listen, oftentimes you can hear bluegill pop in the surface. That's what I look for. If I pull up to a mat or an area and I don't hear any of that going on, I usually don't stop and fish it for very long, or I burn right through that area, seeing if there's, you know, a facade, something there that I'm just, for whatever reason, there's a fish randomly there. Because generally your areas where there's a lot of activity going on, where you got a lot of bugs, ooh, there was a fish that just popped right there. You got bugs, you got bait fish popping and stuff. Those are your areas that are gonna hold your big fish. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you learned a couple new baits and techniques to use whenever it gets super, super hot outside. You know, don't forget, get up shallow around those boat docks, boats, pontoons, stuff like that, and those low light scenarios, and throw little popping mouth baits. Great bluegill imitator, and when those fish are up feeding shallow from the night, they cannot stand that coming by their faces. And then when it gets a little bit hot, the sun gets up high in the sky and you got bluebird conditions, don't be afraid to throw a bait like that eliminator and drag it around any type of point, hard bottom area, and you can catch some of your biggest fish of the entire summer. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to go subscribe to Mystery Tackle Box, and I will catch you very, very soon.